Could there be bad playoff news on the way for the Big 12? That's what it sounds like is a possibility, according to Dennis Dodd's new piece on CBS Sports. Welcome into the YouTube channel. I am John Kurtz. Here on this channel, I try to give the Big 12 a voice. I talk college football every day, and that means right now some conference realignment every day. In a roundabout way, this is realignment related because that is why we do not have an expanded 12-team playoff right now. And Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports did a really nice deep dive into all of the issues, which are many right now, that have kept that from happening. A couple of things to keep in mind as we go through this. A 12-team playoff will be a very good thing for the new look Big 12 because the 12-team proposal had the 6 highest conference champions getting bids into the playoff. You would be virtually assured of a spot every single year if you are the Big 12. It has been hung up, though, in large part because of Texas and Oklahoma leaving to go to the SEC and some mistrust between the leagues and the alliance, and then the SEC, with the Big 12 floundering somewhere in between. So here's what Dodd's article says. First of all, just some background. The college football playoff CEOs who a few months ago looked like they were going to rubber stamp the expansion will now meet with commissioners via Zoom instead of meeting in person. There's no point to meeting in person with this much divisiveness, and there's no point to holding a vote because there is no consensus. Far from it. Okay, so does not look like there's much agreement on anything right now. Dodd says maybe it's just a feeling. Maybe a 12-team playoff is inevitable. It's certainly another screaming example college football needs a commissioner, someone to get in the room and actively create consensus instead of the sport hoping these raging wildfires of self-interest put themselves out. Now, the last part of that hits pretty hard with me and should to you because that's exactly it. Who acts out of their own self-interest in college football and in realignment? Nobody. Everybody is 100% in it for their own self-interest, not the good of the game, not what's good for more people, et cetera, right? So if anybody thinks that that's going to happen, it's extremely, extremely foolish. Continuing with more from Dodd here, contributing to the uncertainty, the conferences have suddenly become extremely self-aware of their leverage in expansion. The vote to expand has to be unanimous. Okay, that is something important to remember. That means one vote can sink the whole enterprise. Suddenly there is buzz about backpedaling to an 8-team bracket or worse, staying at 4. Quote, "We can keep the 4 best teams," SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey told Sports Illustrated. "As I've said repeatedly, consistently, vocally, 4 has worked just as it was intended." I hate hearing that. I hate reading that. I do not like that at all coming from Greg Sankey because that would be very, very, very bad news for the new look Big 12. Keeping the playoff at 4 is just as good as putting a rule in that says no Big 12 team will be allowed in the playoff moving forward. It's been hard enough for the league to try and get teams in now. Just ask Baylor and TCU in 2015 with Oklahoma and Texas still in the league. You take them away, and you've seen how the national media has treated the league already. There would be no leniency to get Big 12 teams into the playoff, into a 4-team playoff, minus Texas and Oklahoma from this league. I mean, think about not just TCU and Baylor in 2015. Think about Cincinnati last year, the fight that they tried to put up. You think that's going to change just because they joined the Big 12? No, it is not. UCF back in 2017 when they were the only unbeaten team in the country. You're not getting in. You're just not going to get in. So the fact that that is even on the table, I mean, I was talking the other day about being worried that there's talks of an 8-team playoff and what that could mean because the SEC would not want auto bids to go into play there. Neither would Notre Dame. That would be terrible. Well, 4 teams is even worse. That is even worse, okay? More from Dennis Dodd throughout this article. He says, same for one unnamed conference, which sources say is in favor of ESPN retaining the rights to the college football playoff. The overwhelming preference is for the next contract to be bid to multiple networks to drive up the price. Those multiple networks would televise the college football playoff much the same way the NFL sells its playoff rounds to different rights holders. Seems like good business, right? Sources tell CBS Sports there is potentially a holdout conference that in theory could, with its vote, squash a lucrative new contract while theoretically blocking an efficient end to this gridlock. You talk about a nightmare scenario for the Big 12. We've already discussed the 4-team playoff. But if it's the 4-team playoff because one league is sticking its neck out for ESPN to try and create a more favorable environment for ESPN, help them strengthen their monopoly and their grip on the sport of college football and continue to let the money pour into only them, create less competition for TV rights in college football, that is horrible. That is dreadful news. It is the last thing anybody in the league wants. We know how ESPN feels about this league. We've seen how far ESPN will go to try and torpedo this league. You do not want them getting more power, and you do not want any other league sticking up for them to try and get them more money, which seems so stupid. That is unbelievable to me. And therein does lie the hope. That would be leaving so much money on the table for everybody involved. Everybody involved here. To keep it at 4 because you want ESPN to retain it. You don't want this to be bid out to multiple folks. Or even if it does expand and you're still going to keep ESPN in sole possession of the power here and the rights, that does so much less good to the game. That does so much less good financially to everybody involved here. I would have to think that common sense and money would win out. But boy, is that a fascinating, juicy tidbit in this story that somebody wants to continue bankrolling ESPN. I mean, I know the obvious answer, or the obvious place people will go is like the SEC. But it's like, man, even the SEC, Sankey, they're all about money, right? I have a hard time almost seeing that. I think the SEC would be like, look, money, let's expand the playoff, get more teams in, more TV networks, more exposure. It'll all be great for the SEC, whatever. Is this the ACC because they're in bed with the ESPN through 2035? Either way, that is appalling to me that there is a league that is out there doing that right now, and that would be the ultimate nightmare scenario for the Big 12. As far as the other issues that are going on here, the Big 10 and the Pac-12 are still putting up a fight over the Rose Bowl, continuing to be played on January 1st at 5 p.m. Eastern. According to Dodd, January 1st day allows the Rose Parade to proceed as traditionally scheduled that morning, and then the game follows. More than that, though, the conferences prefer a Rose Bowl populated with traditional Big 10 and Pac-12 teams, which is virtually impossible in an expanded playoff unless somehow the game is played outside the playoff with a second game at the Rose Bowl, possibly played inside the bracket. Basically, the Rose Bowl thing is a mess, and what I would say to the Big 10 and the Pac-12 is suck it up. Suck it up. You might have to deal with losing some tradition here. It might mean the Rose Bowl's played at a different time. You can still have the game. It might just be a team from the Big 12. It might just be a team from the ACC. Get over it. Everybody else has lost tradition in this whole process. Going back 10 years ago to when realignment started, we don't have Oklahoma and Nebraska anymore, which is a tremendous piece of college football tradition, and we don't have it because of you, Big 10, because you took Nebraska in, okay? Everybody is losing some tradition here. But it's far from the only hurdle. On-campus games, those are another big hurdle here. Nobody can agree on that. Do you do it in the first round with teams that don't have buys? Then the teams that get buys think it's unfair that they got a game at home. The group of 5 getting 22% of the money right now. Is there any room to budge on that? These are more of the issues that are going to be brought up and that nobody can see eye to eye on right now, which in the end leaves you in a very uneasy place. And us in the Big 12 are getting pretty used to being uneasy about everything, right? You're going to be uneasy about this and what it means for the playoff and what that therefore means for the league. If it really does stay at 4, that's terrible news long-term for the Big 12. If it stays at 4 in part because of a league wanting to keep ESPN fully vested in this thing, worst-case scenario for the Big 12. And even if it does get expanded eventually, it looks like 2023 to 25 is going to be pretty difficult for the Big 12 to get teams in because it will be a 14 playoff right now unless something drastically changes through the end of 2025 when that contract with ESPN is done. So there are some things to really keep in mind here when it comes to the Big 12 and the playoff, and that will make it difficult to get momentum rolling with the new conference if you can't basically get a team in from 23 to 25. So lots to think about if you're the Big 12 and lots to follow along here on the channel and hopefully realize we won't get the worst case scenario. But stay here. I'll have you covered. Talk college football every day on this channel. It means conference realignment every day on this channel right now. You know I'm going to have the Big 12's back right here. You can follow me on Twitter at JL Kurtz. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at John Kurtz Show. Find the info for my daily radio show in the description of this video. Take care, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.